The challenge for Singapore is that whilst we can do our best to manage the situation within Singapore as best as possible, we do live in the context of a region that is fast changing, and we also live in the context of a world in which many changes are forcing us to react. There is a certain attractiveness to think back that how nice it is if the pace was slower. And I can relate to that because there are some countries that I visited 15, 20 years ago. And it's charming to visit them again because nothing much has changed. And you still see familiar places, you know. There's no new development. But if I were to ask myself, if I were a citizen of that country, whether I would feel good about it, I would say yes and no. I would say yes from the perspective that it was comfortable for me. I didn't have to make much adjustments. And as long as things don't become too bad, it's okay, life goes on for me. But I'm not so sure that I would think this way when my children, for example, like Casey Tan talked about his friends' children, decide that they no longer want to live in the same country as I do because the opportunities and the quality of life that they can achieve where I live is good enough from their point of view. And I think this is the challenge. Some of the cities that we have come across where the pace has been much slower, nothing has changed that much for 10, 15, 20 years. You may not feel the change in 5 years, 10 years. And if you live in that place, you won't see the change at all. Things just look normal to you. You actually need the lens of a person who goes out and comes back. And then they see that, oh, you know, compared to many other cities, it has become not so interesting. There is an additional pressure that there are many cities that are coming up that are going to be very exciting. For as long as we are in Singapore, we may not feel it. But our citizens will travel. Our children will expose themselves to opportunities. Like what Casey Tan said, we have to pay attention. You have to keep up. You have to find ways in which you remain an attractive place for the young. And if we don't have an appropriate level of advancement, before we know it, we'll be behind already. And by that time, it will be a little bit too late. Today, we look at ourselves when we compare ranking of economies, whether it's this indicator or that indicator. We compare ourselves to China. But China has easily got 10 cities that are 10 million and above people. If you are running a business like Jerry or Casey, would you prefer to be in a market with 5 million or 10 million? If you were a professional, if you were an artist, if you were a sports person, you prefer to be in a market where you have 5 million or 10 million potential audience, potential fans? Answer is very simple, very clear. These different cities are going to pose a tremendous challenge for us competitively. And while it is nice for us to think of, you know, how can we are already achieved a very high level already. Even from 10, 15 years ago, life is quite good. We just stay there. We don't want to go back to the 1960s, but 80s is fine. From 80s, we just carry on. It may suffice for us, for the rest of our generation, but I think I can say with all honesty, it will not suffice for my children's generation, my grandchildren's generation. And if we don't keep up a reasonable pace of development, it will become a disservice to the future generation. But having said that, I think the pace is indeed very fast in Singapore. We will try and find ways to moderate it, help people adjust. But I hope you can consider the fact that Singapore does not exist on its own. We exist in a broader context. Chinese have a nice saying, you know, 逆水行舟，不进则退. You are like a little boat that it is on a stream and you are going against the tide. If you stay still, actually you are moving backwards. So for us to stay still we will actually be moving backwards in some ways. It is a reality we must acknowledge. It is hard, but we cannot escape this reality. In Singapore, this is all we have. We have to make the best of it. No one is going to come and, give us a lift. And today, when we travel with our passport, when people look at us, when they look at your passport, there is value attached to it. No one at the immigration counter thinks that you are an overstayer and you don't have enough money to pay for your stay in whichever country you're visiting. No one will think that way. But that is not the case with many other passports. Then you begin to ask yourself, why should people continue to treat us the way that they do? An unknown country, and yet every time you pass through immigration, they think well of our country. We didn't arrive there by being ordinary. We can only achieve that by being extraordinary. And if we want to be extraordinary, it does take extraordinary effort. It is hard for each one of us, but I think it is worth working for the sake of our future generation.